It's incredibly rare, especially in this day and age, to come across a project, be it a movie, a show, a game, or something else, that absolutely nails it on every level. Hell, since I started this channel, I've only been lucky enough to talk about things like that a small handful of times. So after Arcane Season 1, which was so damn good I couldn't believe it was even real, I was pretty skeptical that the next installment would be able to recapture that lightning in a bottle. Even more so after I heard that it would be the final season. There was so much going on in Season 1, I couldn't see how they could possibly wrap it all up in a satisfying way. So even though the long season hiatus sucked, I was okay with it. My thinking was, it takes how long it takes, I'll deal with the waiting, take your time, do it right, I just want a great show. Well, 3 long years later, Arcane Season 2 is finally here. And I can't believe I get to say this, but every hope and expectation I had for it was met. Arcane Season 2 is an absolute tour de force that I'm still worked up about days after I finished it. It's hard to know where to even begin with this because there are so many aspects of this show that are just next level stuff. The animation? Good God, I've never seen animation this good in a TV series. There are so many beautiful colors and meticulous little details in everything from the art design to character design to just minor background stuff. And the characters move so fluidly and are so expressive and emote so well with so much personality, you almost forget they're not real sometimes. In fact, the animation is so good, with so much thought put into it, that I started analyzing tiny looks, gestures, body language, facial expressions the characters would make, because even if you might not realize it at the time, every single one of those things means something, and there's so much that's being conveyed through the tiniest of details. If a particular look is exchanged between two people, pay attention to it, because the writers are saying something here and you never know when it might turn out to mean something important. Something about the characters' personalities, or the relationship between them, or saying something without words, or hinting at some future plot twist that we haven't seen yet. There's information everywhere, and everything you see, everything the characters do is telling a story. Maybe it won't click into place until later, but it's there. And holy hell did this story surprise me. Season 1 was about telling the origin of Vi and Jinx and establishing their rivalry, and I thought Season 2 would be about building up to their climactic showdown. That's what the trailer focused on. Seems simple enough, right? Well, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but one thing I will say is that it's not nearly as simple as that. In fact, they didn't show Vi versus Jinx in the trailer to get you hyped up for their big battle. They showed you that to avoid spoiling all the bigger stuff that happens. And there is so much stuff that happens. Characters get deeper. Characters that you'd previously written off come back and impact the story in new ways. Storylines get deeper, with new wrinkles and things you never see coming, and twists and turns up until the last minute. New stories get introduced about messianic figures and a brewing war, but not between the two factions you're thinking of. Some characters do complete 180s from where they were in the first season. Allegiances change, with friends becoming enemies, enemies becoming allies, some of them switching back and forth multiple times, and somehow it works because the writing is so smart and the characters are so deep. And I've heard some people complaining about this, saying the flip-flopping got annoying and stupid, or the characters were all over the place, or were just doing what the story needed them to do. And I see where these people are coming from, but honestly, I disagree. Yes, there were a lot of face-heel turns going on, but I thought the writers were really cognizant of all this and worked hard to justify them. It's all motivated by character, and these characters are very human. They're complex and flawed, and they're not always gonna do what you want them to do. Hell, they're usually not gonna do what you want them to do. They screw up, they change their minds, make bad decisions, emotional decisions that they often regret afterward. Vi even acknowledges this.
I choose wrong every time. And because of it, I lost everyone.
I get that the character swerves were frustrating for some people, and I understand why. It's probably not going to be for everyone, but I'm just not on board with that. These characters are written like real people, and real people are messy bitches sometimes. I thought that was the whole point. As long as the writing earns those swerves and they make sense, I don't see what the problem is. Yeah, the characters would do surprising things, but I didn't feel like anyone was out of character here. To me, the characters are one of the best things about this. Even with the huge cast, which gets even bigger in Season 2, everybody is so complicated and multidimensional, and they're just really really fascinating to watch. And every character on the screen means something. People you never even thought twice about or wrote off as a plot device for 1 or 2 episodes, they'll do something pivotal. Characters who are so minor they don't even have any lines play important roles in the final battle. And the major players? Forget about it. Jinx has one of the best arcs I've seen in any animated show or movie in years. After season 1, I thought, okay, she's the villain now, she's the big bad, Vi versus Jinx is the main event. Let's go. And season 2 starts that way, but again, it's not that simple. So many things happen that you don't see coming. You wouldn't expect Jinx to do a lot of self-reflection, to have doubts and regrets about her actions, to second-guess herself, to miss having a sister and being part of a family. We see all her inner turmoil, how she resents the people of Piltover, but comes to begrudgingly admit that some of them are good people, how she misses Vi, but misses Silco too, even though he was a son of a bitch, and how everything got so mixed up in her head that she doesn't know what the right thing to do is anymore and just wants to be done with the whole thing. The writers took this character to such extremes that I thought there was no way back for her, and then had her come full circle and show that there's still humanity in Jinx. Deep down inside her, there's still a person who's just really confused and in a lot of pain. They made me feel so bad for Jinx at times. There's a moment in episode 5 that was so moving, it genuinely made me tear up. And this is all after I thought Jinx had become an irredeemable psychopath. That's the magic of this show. Characters who you think are evil bastards have moments when you can't help but feel for them, and characters you think are the good guys, the idealists, the ones who represent hope, sometimes do absolutely despicable things in the name of what they think is right. And the highest praise I can give the writing is this. Everybody has storytelling pet peeves. Those things that when you see them in a movie or a show, it just drives you up a wall because it never ends well and you know it's just gonna frustrate you nonstop. I have a bunch of those, but some of my biggest ones are AU, alternate timeline multiverse stuff, time travel, and love triangles. Well, Arcane Season 2 has all these things. It even does several of them in one episode, and somehow, some way, they actually made it good. You lie! I know, right? Now, don't get me wrong. The story itself does feel kind of random, and the time travel aspect has a sense of where the did this come from all of a sudden? You do have to take it with a grain of salt. I'm not denying that. But ultimately, it worked for me because they were careful to avoid all the stupid things and cliches about these tropes that I can't stand. I talked about this in the What If reviews. The reason these alternate timeline AU multiverse stories bug the crap out of me is because they always feel like consequence-free fan fiction. There are no rules. It's not the main timeline, so we can just do whatever the we want and none of it matters because we'll never be returning to this anyway. But they didn't do that here. Not only are there major consequences for the characters, but they used this AU episode to push stories in the proper timeline forward. And there's a lot of stuff that matters here because they find a way to make it poignant and heartbreaking as a what could have been if things had gone differently type of deal. And what happens has big ramifications once the timeline is reset back to normal. That fixes nearly every pet peeve I have about stories like this. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, my God, there are so many ideas here that in a different show would make me want to rage quit. I want so badly to hate this, but I can't because it's just done so f***ing well. And the love triangle? Holy shit. I can't stand love triangles. I think they're stupid and annoying and are usually just there to delay the final pairing getting together by using a bunch of lame misunderstandings that could be easily fixed if these dummies would just get their heads screwed on straight. And that's what I was afraid would happen here. Characters A and B have this thing between them, but oh no, here comes character C to get in the middle of it and keep them apart because now B and C are together and A is gonna hate this and blah blah blah. But it doesn't go that way. There are things that keep A and B apart for a while, but they're important things. Things that matter. Loyalties, ideological differences, grudges they struggle to let go of, stuff like that. And turns out the love triangle was done for larger reasons involving the final battle. So it did have a crucial purpose in the story, but when it comes to the romance plot, there are no misunderstandings. It comes up, but then they're not stupid about it. They just blow it off because after everything they've been through, it feels meaningless to them.
I saw someone. I don't fucking care.
It was amazing. The writers did all these things that I hate, and it ended up making the story even better because they somehow avoided all the things that make me hate them. I couldn't believe it. Now, all that being said, there are some things that I wish had been done differently. And it's not that these things are bad, it's more that there just wasn't enough time to do them better. Because the writers had a big story to tell and only 9 episodes to tell it, they had to choose which plots to give the most attention to. And I don't think they even made any bad calls here, but there were storylines that could have used more time in the oven. Like Victor's character takes a pretty drastic turn this season, and I saw what they were going for, but I wish that I'd gotten a bigger deep dive into Victor's mind to really explore how he got there. Mel gets her own storyline that appears kind of late in the game and feels like there was a much longer version of this at some point, but the writers had to condense it to fit the time they had available. And even then, I got the sense that there was still a lot left on the table there that they hadn't gotten to. Also, the creepy Zon scientist who created Shimmer, we find out what's motivating him, but it barely comes up in 2 very short scenes, and there's a lot left unexplained about it. So as great as this season was, man, what they could have done with just 2 or 3 more episodes to flesh these things out, it could have been even better. Damn. And honestly, just hearing the words, "it could have been better," come out of my mouth sounds nuts to me when this show is working on levels above so many other things out there. Like the fight scenes. These are some of the best action sequences I've ever seen in an animated series. Just the way they're staged, the dynamic way they move the camera, and the visceral way each blow hits. How the characters react to getting hit. It's like they want the audience to feel it when the characters are getting the daylights knocked out of them. And the fights are so emotionally charged because the writers are really mindful about building tension. A great fight is one thing, but a fight where a character has a personal stake, like they're battling someone they love who's trying to kill them because they can't control their actions, or have been driven to insanity, or they're just on the opposite side of a war. Every fight has a hook like that, and the white-knuckle tension gets cranked up so damn high, especially in the finale. The finale, by the way, where they save some of the biggest gut punches for last. Jesus Christ, I thought season 1 was ruthless. It's really hard to talk about without spoiling anything, but before the last 3 episodes dropped, I wasn't expecting a happy ending. I was just hoping for a satisfying ending, even though I was pretty much expecting a bloodbath. And while more characters survived than I expected, the way they wrapped the story up hits so goddamn hard and is so emotionally powerful. I don't know if I've ever seen anything equivalent to this in Western animation. In anime, yeah, but holy shit, that is a high fucking bar to reach. And even with as many balls in the air as they had, and they had a lot, it's hard to imagine a more satisfying ending to this thing. All the storylines converge and build up to this incredible climax that is as epic as anything this show has ever done. And I wouldn't say everything is wrapped up. There are some plots that seem more like the beginning of a story than an ending, like Mel's story. I think we only got the tip of the iceberg with what's going on there. And there are other things too, other characters you could absolutely do more with. Some of it is messy, and not everything is resolved, so I was excited to hear that the Arcane team is working on future projects in this universe, meaning that maybe those characters will come back and get to finish their stories later.
Shut up and take my money!
And I want to be sure to talk about this because I know people are going to bring it up. The issue that Arcane is somehow too woke or went the DEI route because many of the characters are women or not straight or not white or whatever. First of all, if that's your complaint about season 2, then I'm guessing you didn't see season 1. Second, I understand where that comes from, but the whole notion of it is weird to me. I think this whole entertainment ecosystem has become so political and divisive that a lot of people have gotten overly sensitive about this stuff and really just need to relax. I've said this before. The mere existence of female characters or non-white characters or LGBT characters doesn't make a show woke. Sure, that word means different things to different people, but what matters is what you do with them. What matters is the story. And it's not like the writers threw tons of identity politics in there. They didn't. The characters aren't there to lecture anyone. They're just trying to exist as they are. Yes, Vi and Caitlin are lesbians. So what? They're lesbians who get one of the most powerful and compelling narratives you could ever ask for in an animated series. And then being gay doesn't invalidate or make anyone else lesser than it would on a different show. I'm looking at you. But Arcane is beyond petty horseshit like that.
But oh my god, it's just more DEI crap. F this noise.
Well, you know, if one of them was a man and they were a straight couple, but everything else about them stayed exactly the same, I don't think anyone would blink at this. So if the major complaint about it is just that it's a gay relationship, that kinda sounds like a you problem. I don't give a shit that Vi and Caitlyn are gay. I just want a good story that makes me care about them. I got both of those things, so I really just don't understand the criticism here. And it's not like there are no straight relationships in the show. This is just the one that gets focused on the most. And just because the show likes to feature its gay characters or female characters in prominent roles doesn't mean the male characters like Jace and Victor and Echo don't have important stuff to do too. Echo is a fucking badass in the finale, and all of them have pivotal roles to play in the story. The idea that the show is somehow woke garbage just because it respects all of its characters but chooses to have certain ones who happen to be women at the forefront, that just doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes a story is about men, sometimes it's about women, sometimes it's about both. If it's a good story, that shouldn't be a problem no matter what option you go with. And it was obvious from the original Season 1 trailer that Arcane was the story of Vi and Jinx. So if you're watching it and complaining that it focuses on the women too much, this show just might not be for you. And if that's a deal breaker, then I personally think you're depriving yourself of an amazing show, but I guess you can't please everybody. Arcane is really special, man. This caliber of show just does not come around very often. Seeing the hate for Season 2 online really bummed me out. Look, I agree, Season 2 was a lot more complicated and went in a bunch of new directions. Could they have simplified things? Yeah, probably. There were some narrative detours they could have done without, like the Mel side story feels kinda last minute and the payoff for it was delivered without a ton of setup. And yes, there were a couple other plots that felt undercooked, but remember, they're working on several new shows in this universe. Some of those plots are likely going to carry over and continue, so maybe they weren't meant to be fully developed right now. I'm not saying the show is perfect. I'm saying the positives far outweigh the negatives here, and I choose to focus on the positives in this case because of all the things that the show gets right. Because the stuff it gets right is so f***ing good that I don't mind making a few allowances. I can overlook the minor missteps as long as the effort is on the screen. And regardless of how you feel about Season 2, you cannot say they phoned it in. Were there aspects of it that you could pick apart? Sure, you could say that about anything. But those missteps didn't matter so much to me at the end of the day. And there's one more thing I want to touch on. I'm not naive enough to think that Arcane can appeal to both sides of the political spectrum. I don't know if a show like that even exists. But I've heard the complaints about Season 2, woke, DEI, in addition to issues with the writing. Whatever. And on a lesser show, I might be complaining about that stuff too, because more often than not, I'd be talking about a show that's just a giant piece of crap. The fact that I never once had to do that in this video should say something. I have to talk about plenty of really shitty movies and shows in this gig. Projects that give me a lot to complain about. And sometimes I will criticize that stuff because the thing I'm watching is just not any good, or not bringing anything else to the table, or is weaponizing its female, non-white alphabet characters against an audience that the creators don't respect or appreciate. Arcane doesn't do that. I liked all the characters, even the ones that frustrated me or pissed me off sometimes, and I was sucked in by the story. The twists and turns could be too much for some people. I just wasn't one of those people. If you were looking for a Season 2 that was simpler and more straightforward, I understand that. There were moments when I kind of wanted that too. But when it was all said and done, Arcane Season 2 scratched me where I itched. I was satisfied with the ending. I think these creators accomplished something pretty extraordinary with this show. I'm excited for whatever future stories they get to tell in this universe, and considering how groundbreaking Season 1 was, I really couldn't ask for more than that. Thanks so much for watching. I know this video was late. I'm sorry. I was out of town for a few days doing family stuff for Thanksgiving, but I'm home now. No more delays, hopefully, because we've got a lot more stuff coming up. More videos on the way. Get hyped for that. Craven, Daredevil Born Again, Snow White. It never stops. In the meantime, ding that bell icon and follow my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. The links are down there. And don't forget to do all the other YouTube things by smashing that like button, leaving a comment, sharing the video, subscribing if you haven't already, making sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more real soon. Take care, stay tuned, I'll see you next time.